Tons of news to talk about today. Let's start with FSR 3.1. I did a dedicated video on the topic that I'm kind of showing right here. We can see a whole bunch of side-by-side footage. My main conclusions are it's still not up to DLSS's standards. If you look at like the shimmering on the what's the robot's name? Clank, right? on his back here. It's still not caught up to the reduction in shimmering compared to DLSS, but it has some other improvements as well. So the main highlights for FSR 3.1, again, a lot more details in my full video, are a number of things here. I'll become the pointer. There's upscaling improvements. AMD is claiming improved temporal stability, reduced flickering and shimmering, enhanced ghosting reduction and better detail preservation, enhanced frame generation. However, it doesn't seem to be that the frame generation quality is the improvement here. They're saying that they have decoupled frame generation from the upscaling solution being used. In other words, people with an RTX 20 or 30 series GPU could use DLSS upscaling, which, as I said, I believe still looks better than FSR 3.1 upscaling, but could use it with FSR 3.1 frame generation since they're not compatible with DLSS 3 frame generation. So that's really good news for a lot of people. And then they're also upgrading the FSR API to simplify upgrades for developers to use future versions of FSR. In other words, it looks like they're moving to a model where it will be easier to just kind of drop in updated versions of FSR. So as hopefully the upscaling algorithm continues to improve, you should be able to have an easier time updating to those latest versions, kind of like how with DLSS, you can just kind of drop in the newest DLL and it works. They're also adding support for Vulkan and Xbox Game Development Kit. I noticed with this update that my Steam Deck could now just use FSR frame generation in the supported games that got this update, whereas before it was grayed out, which is cool. However, the amount of performance boost I got out on the Steam Deck wasn't a lot, so I'm not really sure it's worth using, but it is now able to be used. So that's pretty cool. So far, there's 5 games being supported as of now, with God of War Ragnarok coming soon. So cool stuff. Some other outlets haven't really got full testing out there yet. I did see Digital Foundry this morning in their DF Weekly, had a couple quick look screenshots, but haven't done any full analysis. So I'm looking forward to see an analysis in a lot more games with a lot more testing and side-by-sides and zooming in than I had time to get to in my video. In this initial impression from Digital Foundry, it looks like they're stating, similar to what I saw, that FSR 3.1 is less pixelated in motion than FSR 2.2, but it's still more pixelated in motion than DLSS. And they also threw in some XESS comparison here as well. So basically, it does look like an improvement over what we had before, but still not reaching the same level of smoothness in motion that we get from solutions like DLSS. Now, if you want the best price to performance PC builds on the internet, they're confidently claiming it. We've got Jawa saying, yep, we said it, buy and sell with our community of real gamers for epic builds at unbeatable prices. Check out today's sponsor, Jawa.gg, and I can also get you $10 off your first purchase if you use code OWEN10. This is really cool. If you haven't checked out Jawa, there's a lot of things you can do here. You can shop custom PCs. You can upgrade your build by looking for specific PC parts and accessories. You can sell your GPU. You can either become a seller and list parts like your GPU or others yourself, or you can sell your GPU directly to Jawa, taking all of the hassle out of that experience, getting the simplest and fastest way to sell the GPU. There's a ton of cool stuff available. You can see a lot of customer reviews from happy customers. Again, they're offering a wide variety of pre-built systems at very competitive prices and a wide variety of price points. They also have monthly giveaways if you sign up to their email list, so check a look at that. And also, if you want help planning out your build, take a look at their Discord with over 10,000 members where you can get experts helping you out with those build choices. And again, I can get you $10 off your first purchase using code OWEN10. Follow the link in the video description and or pinned comment. Now we have a bit of other AMD news besides the FSR 3.1 drop. One is that they did get a new graphics driver out there, which has a couple very notable features beyond the, just the new game support for First Descendant and Once Human, and expanding their Hypertune profiles to some more games. There's also the introduction of AMD's anti-lag 2 support for Counter-Strike 2, and you might be like, didn't they already have that? Previously, it was in a separate preview driver if you wanted to get anti-lag 2 support, and now it's actually into this main driver release. So that's really good to see. This anti-lag 2 is basically more of a direct competitor to NVIDIA's Reflex technology, where it reduces latency in games, but does require to be directly integrated into the game itself, rather than AMD's previous attempt using anti-lag plus, which was a driver-level version, which was cool, but also got flagged by anti-cheat systems, unfortunately causing some major headaches. Getting that pulled, and now it's back in the form of anti-lag 2, but again does require that direct game integration, and currently seems to only be available in Counter-Strike 2. Hopefully we see that list expand soon. Also of note in this is fixed issues. I did a video recently talking about AMD driver issues. I had people emailing me about wanting me to look into their issues with Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas. Failing to launch, and it does look like that issue has been fixed, although I haven't tested that myself. It is on their list of fixed issues. You can also see an improvement. I've seen another driver issue I've seen people complain about is Helldivers 2. And this is on their list of fixed issues as well, saying improvement to intermittent driver timeout or application crash experiments while playing Helldivers 2. Now it says improvement. It doesn't say maybe, completely solved, so note, and Helldivers 2 is not a game that I have tested myself, so I've just been hearing from people saying that there were some issues with Helldivers 2 on AMD graphics, and apparently there's some issues fixed here. Anyway, so definitely check that out, and that's good to see some major improvements there. Another interesting thing I saw in the news from AMD is apparently we're seeing at videocards.com. By the way, all of my sources will be in the video description, so you can follow any of these for more information. We're seeing AMD to present neural texture block compression technology. So apparently, this says next week, although I think that would be this week as of the time I'm reporting it. AMD is set to showcase its method of using neural networks for texture compression. Now, this is pretty interesting because last year we saw NVIDIA presenting a type of random access neural compression for material textures. And we saw a paper about that. Now, we haven't really seen that make its way into games yet, and we don't know when we might see this AMD version make their way into games. I don't know. But it's definitely seems to be an open area of research for both GPU companies, and this seems to be something similar, although maybe it's different. We don't know a lot about it until it gets fully presented, but it looks like they're saying we'll present neural texture block compression in London at EGSR 2024. Nobody likes downloading huge game packages. Our method compresses the texture using a neural network, reducing data size. Unchanged runtime execution allows easy game integration. So they're claiming that this is a way to maybe reduce the texture size in the download of the game. I don't know, it's unclear exactly how that applies to maybe what the game actually looks like, or if it uses more or less VRAM when actually running, or if it is just changing the install size of the game. It'll be interesting to get more information about it. Now, moving on to Intel news, we do see Intel Core Ultra 200V Lunar Lake reportedly hits 4,100 points in Timespy at 30 watts. Okay, so this is a videocards.com article. Now, this is coming from, but they're getting the information from Jakin, who is apparently the same individual who revealed the Intel Core Ultra 200V lineup ahead of time. The integrated Xe2 graphics and the upcoming Intel Lunar Lake processors might show competitive edge against AMD's Strix Point. So if we look at this, the Timespy numbers that we're getting out of this, and then videocards.com helpfully lines the Timespy graphics score up against a GeForce RTX 3050 laptop at 50 watts as kind of a 100% baseline performance. and then shows a bunch of stuff stacked here. We can see that the Ryzen AI 9 HX370 is reportedly outperforming what we're getting here from Intel's Lunar Lake chip, but these are at very different power targets and actually extremely close in performance. This is 30 watts versus 54 watts. However, the videocards.com article here is pointing out that the way the power numbers are reported here could be different between the brands, because Lunar Lake will feature memory on package configuration with either 16 gigabytes or 32 gigabytes of LPDDR5X 8533 memory, which is soldered onto the base tile, and this means the power settings are not directly comparable to AMD Ryzen or Intel Meteor Lake, as those do not account for memory power consumption, which is expected to be around 2 to 3 watts. So anyway, it's looking like this could be pretty efficient and performant based on this Timespy graphics score. But again, I'm not always that interested in synthetic benchmarks, because seeing real-world gaming performance, it can often not line up to synthetic benchmarks, especially depending on how optimized drivers are for the game. So we have still seen that while Intel has been drastically improving their drivers, they still tend to not be as optimized in as many games as a lot of AMD or NVIDIA drivers are. So anyway, but either way, both of these look like they could be extremely interesting in getting those kind of mobile chips up to a very high level of graphics performance. So pretty cool. Now, going down to the 17-watt profile, which might be more like what you'd want to see on like a handheld system or something like that, performance does drop, but it still looks to be pretty competitive with what we're seeing from like 15-watt parts on the AI 300ES leaked scores here and things like that. So now a lot of this is going off of leaked scores, so make of it what you will. But this is also interesting in that these are the Xe2 graphics, which would be expected to be seen in Intel's Battlemage GPUs, when or if we ever see them. So what do we know from Intel's Battlemage? So apparently we're getting some leaks that point to Battlemage discrete GPUs should be coming. We're seeing the kinds of signs we would see, expect as we get closer to launch. But the closer they get to launching around the same time as we get, NVIDIA's 5000 series, I'd say the less interesting they may be, depending on price point, but I would love to be surprised. So what do we have lately about Battlemage? We do see headlines that Battlemage is getting ready for battle. Intel adds 5 new device IDs to the Linux Xe kernel. Now, that's cool, more device IDs, but there's not a whole lot of information about what that would mean in terms of performance or specs or anything like that. But at least it does mean that there seems to be moves towards Battlemage SKUs coming out at some point. We do also see a headline from Tom's Hardware that Intel Arc Battlemage GPU surfaces, BMG G31 silicon reportedly wields 32 Xe2 cores. But again, this appears to be some pretty kind of weak leak and rumor type stuff, not a lot of information to go on. Now, in general, though, there is some indication from Intel themselves that the next generation of Intel graphics could be a lot faster than their previous generation, although they were specifically talking about the mobile chips rather than the discrete chips. They did say that the Xe2 graphics could be 1.5 times better versus their previous Meteor Lake, which was based on the Intel Arc series graphics. Now we're looking at the Battlemage graphics. So there's some indications that there could be big advancements with Battlemage. But again, we don't have a lot to go off of when it comes to the discrete chips. Most of these leaks and as well as actual information from Intel seem to be more about the mobile side of things. Now, speaking of prices, because that's where Intel has tried to be really competitive with their Arc series of graphics cards, was pricing very competitively. We do see some bad signs that the market could be pretty expensive in the next generation, as RAM prices could go up, making VRAM become more expensive. So if newer process nodes are more expensive, RAM prices go up, making VRAM more expensive. I don't know. I'm just hoping that our next series of GPUs is more of a big price to performance increase rather than being sold on newer features. I keep seeing headlines like this making me a little bit pessimistic on that. So I don't know. We'll have to see what comes of it. The other player in the race that's kind of interesting is what's going on with the ARM chips. Now there's the Windows on ARM, but then there's also the actual just ones targeting more of the smartphone market. And I did notice this headline, which is kind of interesting, which is that Snapdragon 8 Gen 4 Adreno 830 GPU could be rumored to launch with a DLSS Frame Generation-like feature. In other words, it's looking like smartphones might start to get frame generation if this rumor ends up being true, because this does appear to be more in the leaks and rumors side of things rather than an official technology update. Also, if the Snapdragon processors and the Adreno GPUs get frame generation on phones, any reason to expect we might not get something similar into their Windows builds with the Windows on ARM stuff. Speaking of the Windows on ARM, if you were wanting to buy it for gaming, so last news video I did about a week ago, we had just got the very initial testing on some of those Snapdragon X Elite based Windows on ARM devices. And so testing was pretty limited. But as more tests and more laptops are out, we're really starting to get the message that this is not something you should be buying for gaming. PC World has the headline, "Tested, don't buy a Snapdragon X Elite laptop for PC gaming." Now, again, I will link all the sources in the video description, but one of the big things they point out here is that they tried a bunch of games, and a bunch of the games have various issues, from either just crashing without launching at all, or once you launched them, having major stutters or issues causing them to be completely unusable. However, some games did end up being usable, but they massively underperformed when compared with an Intel Ultra 155H Intel Arc-based laptop. And the other thing I'd mention here is they weren't even comparing against AMD, which in my testing significantly outperforms the Arc graphics in the Ultra 7 155H. So we see here the Adreno X1 Snapdragon X Elite based PC massively underperforming in games like Civilization 6, Dota 2, Diablo 2 Resurrected, all sorts of games here. Final Fantasy 14, it was a little bit closer, but still underperforming, especially with the minimum frame rates. That's where a lot of the issues come in, is you'll get big stutters in some games that you're not getting on those other systems. And again, this is what we're seeing compared against the Intel's offering. I think if you threw AMD in there, you might even get blown out of the water a bit worse. So it's looking like don't buy one of those currently for gaming as your primary use case. But what if you were going to buy it for the new Copilot Plus exclusives to the Intel on ARM platform right now? Well, we're getting a headline from Tom's Hardware saying Microsoft's Copilot Plus PC exclusive features are a bad joke, even for AI fans. Again, you can follow this link to get more of the full details. But basically, with the recall feature being recalled, there's really 3 exclusive Copilot Plus features for the Windows on ARM platform currently. There's Co-Creator, which is a text-to-image drawing feature added to Paint. There's Windows Studio Effects, which are basically filters for your webcam, like a background blur. And then there's live captioning with translation. Now, this article goes through and kind of picks these apart one by one. And if we look at it, they're basically saying that, okay, if you ask Paint to draw a cat in a car using the Copilot Plus thing, and then you sketch out a cat in a car, it should hopefully generate a cat in a car. However, it generated a cat that was not in a car and seemed to really have nothing to do with what they sketched out here, unless maybe it thought this was supposed to be the cat's feet rather than a car. But the context of the car seems to be totally lost. Now, another thing they point out is that if you disconnect from the internet, it doesn't work at all. Now, that doesn't mean that it's actually hidden, hiding that it's really doing all of this in the cloud versus on the local PC. It is doing it on the local PC, but apparently it requires an internet connection to make sure you're not asking it to do anything, anything unallowed. You're not asking for something that's outside of their, I don't know, terms of what's appropriate for an AI to generate. So apparently that filter happens through the internet, which means that, let's say you're on you're in airplane mode or something, you're not going to be able to use this feature. That is, the whole point was that it would run locally. So if you have to be connected to the internet anyway, they point out that, well, you could have just used a Microsoft's image creator to do a cat driving in a car, where it can actually make a photorealistic image of a cat driving in a car. But this is done through the cloud rather than locally on the device. And that does have, a limited number of tokens that you can use for free. But the point is, the quality is pretty low. They say that the studio effects that are done to blur backgrounds are just similar to what most video streaming services offer in a cloud-based solution, which doesn't use anything on your device, and their portrait blurring stuff tends not be great. And the and when you try to ask it to have the eyes track to make it look like your eyes are looking at the webcam even when they're not, it apparently isn't working because he's still clearly looking up. And then live captions with translation, apparently when he tried to find a video that just couldn't do that automatically, like on Bilibili, for example, it seems to not be doing a very good job. Anyway, you can dive in here for more information, but it's looking like the exclusive Copilot Plus features are currently not great. And then, as we're seeing here at PC World, these aren't good for gaming either. So what exactly is the point of these Copilot Plus PCs? It is cool to see Windows up and running on ARM a lot better than it was in the past. And it looks like for a lot of general purpose computing rather than gaming, it can function fairly well. But if it's not priced significantly better or running significantly better than x86-based solutions, you're kind of taking in some compatibility headaches for what exactly is it that you're gaining. Anyway, speaking of x86 CPUs, we are expecting to get a whole bunch of new CPUs coming out soon. AMD's Ryzen 9000 series processors have started to have pre-orders available with pricing attached, at least at one retailer, so we can get some idea of what the pricing may be, although to be clear, these are just pre-order prices at one particular retailer, not necessarily what we're going to see as the official MSRP. So if we go ahead and take a look at what sort of pricing was available by model, you can see the prices here, the 9600X at 309 euros, about 400 euros on the 9700X, about 500 euros on the 9900X, and about 660 euros on the 9950X. One interesting thing this videocards.com article does is give us this table where you can look at this retailer's pricing for these pre-orders versus the pricing that they had for the 7000 series processors, and you can actually see that it does look like model by model, the pricing for the 9000 series does appear to be a bit lower than what they had available on the 7000 series, but we don't, like I said, have official MSRP pricing on these at all. Now, we do have some idea on availability, and some other informations as well for performance. Now, AMD themselves at Computex had said that the 7800X3D will likely still be faster in gaming. However, we're seeing from outlets like WCCF Tech that AMD could be considering actually bumping the 9700X TDP up higher than originally planned in order to give it a slight edge in gaming against the 7800X 3D, because that would probably help their marketing as it being the fastest gaming chip rather than losing to the X3D chips from their previous generation. However, this information is coming from WCCF Tech, and they seem to just be claiming their own sources rather than this being an official an official update from AMD or anything. And it's also possible that perhaps it would maybe be reserved for maybe a SKU that came out later, some kind of X series chip, XT series chip, or, call it something else and give it the higher TDP. I don't know. So there's also Again, why not just wait for the X3D series for the 9000? Because the current rumors point to a September launch date. So in general, it's looking like you might not have to wait too long on that. Also, if you wanted to get one of the new 800 series motherboards to go with the 9000 series chips, it's looking like the motherboards, again, coming from WCCF Tech, kind of citing their own sources, people they talk to at Computex most likely, it's sounding like those boards will be coming on the 30th of September. So if it's true that the X3D chips will be coming in September, it might make sense to kind of wait on the new motherboards if you're not already bought into the AM5 platform, along with the X3D chips, if you kind of hold out till September. Again, this is all based on rumor and leaks rather than on official information from AMD, though, so do definitely keep that in mind. Also, again, kind of WCCF Tech citing their own sorts of contacts, but again, people did talk a lot at Computex to motherboard manufacturers and stuff, so it's possible this ends up being accurate information, but again, take it with a grain of salt. They're claiming that AMD's Ryzen 9000 Zen 5 CPUs could offer up to 6400 mega transfer per second RAM in a 1-to-1 mode, whereas I believe the 7000 series only offered 6000 in 1-to-1 mode, and if you went past that, you would be leaving 1-to-1 mode. But apparently, with the 9000 series, if you go into 1-to-2 mode, you can go up to 8,000 mega transfers per second, which is, I think, faster than what you could get out of the 7000 series. If you're confused about the whole 1-to-1 versus 1-to-2 modes, I think the general idea is that in 1-to-1 mode, you have less latency, but you have more limitations to the max transfer speeds. Whereas if you go into 1-to-2 mode, I believe there's a trade-off in worse latency, but you're getting the higher transfer speed. So depending on what you're trying to do, one may be better than the other. But guys, I'm just going to be honest, I'm not that into all of the memory overclocking, and I tend to run things like I might kick on PBO and call it and your XMP or Expo profile and call it a day. Because generally for me, running into potential stability issues for slightly increased performance tends to not be worth it, at least for me. But I understand a lot of people are into chasing all those overclocking and all that. So there you go. It's possible you could get better deals out of that. Also, in the overclocking side of things, I found this at videocards.com, but apparently it's also sourced from WCCF Tech. The next generation of Ryzen 9000 X3D CPUs could feature full overclocking support. Now, this is different than what we saw from the previous generations. The X3D CPUs have always had more limited overclocking support compared to their non-X3D counterparts. I will once again become the point. And so the 5000 series X3D chips offered memory overclocking, meaning you could kick on your Expo memory, but didn't have any kind of PBO auto overclocking or any manual overclocking support. The 7000 series added in PBO, but still did not allow manual overclocking. But at least according to WCCF Tech, which may or may not end up being true, the 9000 series X3D chips will allow some manual overclocking with some safeguards in place. So, interesting, but we'll have to see how that plays out or if it ends up being true. Also, with AMD CPUs, in addition to the new desktop parts, we're also expecting to see the new mobile chips with the Ryzen AI 300 Strix Point processors. But originally, rumors were pointing to these coming out on the 15th. Now it's looking like July 28th is the actual availability date. And I tried to back this up because this Tom's Hardware article was just coming from a leaker Golden Pig Upgrade who does have a reliable track record, but again, it's leaks and rumors. So in my attempt to verify this, I did check out Best Buy, and they have some PCs listed for pre-order that feature the Ryzen AI 300 series chips. And if you try to pre-order one right now, it does say that they will be delivered on or shortly after their release date of July 28th. So that does seem to corroborate the July 28th date for the Ryzen AI, what is the name? AI 9300, is that what they're calling it? I can't get used to the new naming schemes. Anyway, also, there's even more CPUs coming out with the new Ryzen 5000 series processors, getting an XT version of the 5900 and the 5800. The 5900 XT being interesting in that it's a 16-core chip, so it's more like a 5950, but with a slight clock reduction. Anyway, so these are apparently coming out on July 31st. Again, more so if we're trying to track all of the CPU launches coming up soon, I was so thankful that this videocards.com article included this. So, massive number of upcoming CPUs. Sounds like my kids are stomping a little more upstairs. Sorry if it gets noisy. Anyway, massive number of upcoming CPUs. So it looks like July 28th, we will get the Ryzen AI 300 series, Strix Point CPUs. On July 31st, we will be getting the Ryzen 9000 series CPUs, but we will also be getting these refreshed 5000 XT series CPUs. It's looking like in September, around the 17th through 24th, Intel will be releasing the Core Ultra 200V Lunar Lake CPUs. And then on September 30th, we'll be getting the AMD X870 motherboards for their 9000 series. So again, we'll be getting the 9000 series CPUs before we get the new motherboards, but the CPUs will be compatible with the previous generation motherboards because it's still the AM5 platform. Okay, then apparently in September, we may be getting the 9000 X3D CPUs, but again, that's still this is all still really more rumor and leak based than official information. Anyway, October of 2024, we should be getting Intel's Core Ultra 200K Arrow Lake CPUs and their Z890 motherboards. And apparently in January of 2025, we'll be getting the Intel Core Ultra 200 Arrow Lake S CPUs with the lower end motherboards, the B860s and H810s. So, massive number of CPUs coming out in both the mobile and desktop space and new motherboard generations and all of that. So hopefully this helps clarify some of that for you. Last thing I'll leave you guys with today is apparently Steam got updated to have its own game recording features built into Steam, which also run on the Steam Deck, which is perhaps the place that'll be most interesting since on desktop PCs you have a lot of other ways to do game recording. So anyway, it looks like you can record games in the background, and certain games could even like highlight certain areas for you if they support that, or you can tag things manually while you're playing to go back to and look at your game clip and things like that. And convenient ways to share clips within Steam and stuff. So this seems like just another cool feature add as Steam continues to add more features, especially with their push to make the Steam Deck and SteamOS run super well on there and all that. So anyway, cool stuff. Hopefully you guys found today's video useful and or interesting. Don't forget to check out jawa.gg where I can get you $10 off your first purchase using code OWEN10. Again, hope everybody has an excellent day.